Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles, and today I want to share with you some fun that I've been having with 152mm gun armed cruisers in combination with the Inertia Fuse High Explosive skill, which is available as a tier 4 skill on your commander. Now, here we have the Bediony. It's a Soviet tier 6 cruiser. It's armed with 152mm guns, and when I'm talking about Inertia Fuse for high explosive shells, this is the skill I'm talking about. What it does is it increases the penetration of your high explosive shells only on both your primary and secondary batteries by 30%. So that's 30% extra penetration for your high explosive ammunition across the board. The trade-off is you have a 3% reduced chance of setting a fire on the target that you hit with those high explosive shells. Now that seems like quite a trade-off. However, there is a skill at tier 3 that you can choose which will offset that reduction in chance of setting a fire on target, and that's the Demolition Expert skill. This is a 3-point skill, and this increases the chance that you're going to set fire on target when you hit them with a high explosive shell by 2%, so the net trade-off is you're only actually losing a 1% chance of setting fire to your target. However, we can mitigate that even further by mounting the India X-ray signal flag, and this with a 152mm gun gives us an increased 0.5% chance of setting fire. So the net trade-off is we're only losing 0.5% chance of setting fire to target, but we're getting 30% increased penetration on our high explosive shells, and that seems like a reasonable trade-off to me. But why is this so important with 152mm guns? Good question, glad you asked. We're going to use the Bediony as an example because I have it, and I have the IFHE skill on my Bediony captain, but 152mm is a fairly common caliber for cruisers, certainly at mid-tier, and if you're in the Royal Navy light cruisers, all the way up to tier 10. And the Bediony is a good example because it's tier 6, so it can fight ships up to and including tier 8. It's armed with 152mm guns. It has 9 of them in 3 turrets, 3 guns per turret, 2 turrets up forward, 1 turret aft. The guns have a very, very good range, and they have a fairly good reload as well, with 8 seconds between shots. So, the IFHE skill on 152mm guns. Now, if, like me, when this skill was first introduced into the game in the last patch, you looked at it and thought, well, okay, 30% increased penetration on high explosive. I don't know how much penetration my high explosive shells have in the first place, or my armour piercing shells for that matter. Those values are not listed here in the game. Well, to put it very simply, in order to find out how much armour your high explosive shells can penetrate, all you do is you take the calibre of the gun, you divide by 6, and then you round up or down to the nearest full number. So, 152 divided by 6 is 25.3 recurring. We drop that down to the nearest whole number, which is 25. This gives us the penetration value of 25mm for 152mm high explosive. This is without the Inertia Fuse High Explosive skill. That does not, however, mean that a 152mm high explosive shell can penetrate 25mm of armour. It means it can only penetrate 24mm of armour, and that's very, very important, because the actual thickness of bow and stern, and in a large number of cases deck armour plating in World of Warships, is tied directly to the class of ship and what tier it is. Now, there are some exceptions to the values that I'm about to give you, but generally speaking, from tier 4 all the way up to tier 10, these are the kind of armour thicknesses on bow, stern and deck plating that you can generally expect to see on battleships, cruisers and destroyers. Now, the values for tier 4 and 5 ships are not particularly important, because even a tier 4 or 5 battleship typically only has 19mm of bow, stern or deck armour, and we can penetrate up to 24mm of armour anyway with 152mm high explosive, even without the Inertia Fuse High Explosive skill. When we get to tier 6 and higher, however, the numbers start to get very interesting, because typically the bow plating, as well as the deck plating and the stern plating for a tier 6 or 7 battleship, is 25mm. And you can't penetrate that with 152mm high explosive. Remember, 152 divided by 6 is 25.3 recurring. You round it down to 25, but the armour penetration value with high explosive has to exceed the thickness of the armour, so we'd need 26mm of high explosive penetration to defeat the bow, stern and deck armour of a tier 6 or 7 battleship. Inertia Fuse High Explosive gives you an extra 30%. suddenly we can defeat the bow, stern and deck armour of Tier 6 and 7 battleships with 152mm guns. Tier 6 and 7 battleships are not the only ships in the game that typically have 25mm of fore, aft, sometimes even belt and deck armour. Tier 8, 9 and 10 cruisers also have this 25mm armour thickness in common across much of the ship. So you can see why this 25mm thickness of armour is such an important number, because without the IFHE skill you cannot penetrate that armour. The bow, the stern, the deck, and as far as the cruiser is concerned, much of the belt armour is completely impervious to 152mm high explosive, and you will only really do damage to them if you hit the superstructure. It gets better, however, because we're not just talking about being able to penetrate 25mm of armour. Remember, we're adding 30% to our base 25mm armour penetration value. That's an extra 7.6mm of penetration, and 7.6 plus 25.3 recurring is 32.9. We round that up to 33, which means that our 152mm HE can now penetrate 32mm of armour. And 32 is another very important number, because Tier 8, 9 and 10 battleships have 32mm of bow, stern and deck armour, and now we can penetrate that as well. Now, I have absolutely no doubt that at this point people are sitting there thinking, why is Jingles getting so excited about having 32mm of penetration? That's nothing. Fire armour piercing. But what if the ship is angled towards you? Your armour piercing is going to bounce. High explosive doesn't bounce. It doesn't lose penetration with range. It doesn't care about the angle at which it impacts the armour. It either has enough penetration to defeat the armour and is going to do damage every time, or it doesn't have enough penetration and it's going to do no damage. Here's a little example of the sort of thing that I'm talking about. I'm in the Bajoni Tier 6 cruiser, armed with 152mm guns, and I've been joined in a training room here on the ocean map by World of Warships EU community contributor Arun. He's agreed to give me a sacrificial Yamato to shoot at. That is the Yamato, Tier 10 battleship. Without this skill, I wouldn't have a prayer of penetrating the Yamato's armour. Now, I know you're sitting there thinking, yeah, but a Bajoni's never going to face a Yamato in a random battle anyway, so what's the point here, Jingles? Well, yep, that's absolutely true. But while the Yamato has 32mm of bow plating and stern plating, so does the North Carolina, and the Bismarck, and the Amagi. Those are Tier 8 battleships, and I will face those in random battles. So just to kind of drive the point home, here's a Tier 10 monster, and watch how this Tier 6 cruiser with 152mm guns melts a Tier 10 battleship from the front with its high explosive ammunition. And sets a fire through the bow armour. It's not just the bow armour, by the way, on the Yamato that's 32mm thick. Some of the belt armour, above the torpedo bulge obviously, is also 32mm thick, and I can penetrate that as well. Now, I also realise that some of you are no doubt sitting there thinking to yourselves, well, this isn't particularly realistic, is it, Jingles? I mean, what battleship is going to just sit there and let you pile shots into them at this kind of range? I mean, he'd blow you out of the water as soon as look at you. Well, under normal circumstances, yes, he would. But how many times have you taken advantage of a battleship that's engaged in a gunfight with another battleship or another cruiser, or who's been distracted by attempting to avoid torpedoes fired by a carrier or a destroyer? If you pay attention to what's going on in the game and you take advantage of ships that have been occupied by dealing with another threat, you can get yourself into positions where you're able to take advantage of circumstances not unlike this. Or even if you do have the undivided attention of another enemy ship, you can still make it work by exploiting the weakness of the bow plating, like that Admiral Hipper, for example, which has 25mm of bow plating, and at that kind of angle, armour piercing is automatically bouncing. Not so with Inertia Fuse High Explosive. So, with this skill on my Bajoni Captain, I thought I'd take it out into a random battle and see what sort of damage I can do. This is a Tier 6 battle, so there isn't a single ship on the enemy team that I cannot penetrate the bow, stern or deck plating of with these 152mm guns firing high explosive. But it wouldn't have made any difference if it had been a tier 8 battle. Well, it might have made a difference to the amount of damage that I took, but the amount of damage that I'd be capable of inflicting would be exactly the same regardless, because a tier 8 battleship has 32mm of bow, deck and stern plating. And I can penetrate 32mm with my high explosive at any range and at any angle. So we're playing on the Strait map, and that means straight away the team's been split into two squadrons. I'm in the northern squadron, the rest of the team you can see on the minimap is down there in the south. Now when I find myself on the Strait map, the first thing I do is I have a look around at the ships that are around me and decide right from the start whether or not I'm going to contest this end of the map, or whether or not I'm going to bug out and assist the team in overwhelming the enemy on the other side of the map. So we've got two battleships, we've got a Nürnberg cruiser and we've got a Fubuki, but the Fubuki's AFK. And the Nürnberg seems determined to give his position away by firing his guns at just, well, nothing in particular. This of course extends his detection range, so he's likely to start attracting fire from any enemy battleships. This is not giving me a warm fuzzy feeling about the northern end of the map here on Strait. The enemy team have got 3 destroyers thanks to our AFK Fubuki there. We don't have a destroyer on this end of the map, so the enemy team are going to have the spotting advantage. And one of the big advantages of the Badioni is the exceptionally good range of its main battery guns, 16.6 kilometers. And I'm just not going to be able to use that kind of advantage unless that Nürnberg starts attracting some fire from enemy battleships, which is entirely likely, as he's insisting on blazing away at absolutely nothing while steaming straight towards the enemy team. So I'm pretty much made my mind up at this point, as the Bayern then just derps his guns right into the water in front of him and gives his position away when, yep, sure enough, we start attracting fire from the enemy Fuso. Now he's just outside of shooting range, however, I do have a spotting plane consumable, but he only doesn't get a catapult fighter, gets a spotting plane instead, which further extends the range. And this is important because, remember, armour piercing loses penetration with range. High explosive does not, and the Fuso is now in range. I have now been detected. After firing my guns, I've been spotted by aircraft, but so far nobody is targeting me. And that didn't miss the Fuso by much. I'm still not convinced it's worth contesting the northern end of the map, so I am heading down towards the south, but while the spotter plane is up, I'm going to get as many shots in as possible on these enemy battleships. There's the Fuso there, there's also a New York, and with nobody targeting me, I can afford to slow down and adjust my fall of shot while keeping an eye on those enemy torpedo bombers. Let's get some shots at the New York. I haven't actually hit anything yet. I'm not particularly good at using this spotter plane consumable, I do have to admit. But I've scored some hits on the New York. And I am now being targeted by somebody. It's likely to be one of those two battleships, either the New York or the Fuso, so it's time to make myself scarce now that I know somebody is actively trying to sink me. Got some shots off at the New York, scored a couple of hits, shot down an aircraft, managed to get some shots off at the Fuso before I got into cover around the side of this island, and now there's an enemy destroyer at very, very close range. I'm pretty sure this enemy Fubuki was not paying attention to the map and had no idea he was about to get a broadside from me. Our Fubuki is now woken up and he's heading south, and that's the guy this is coming out to engage, and I've just taken a third of his health off, knocked out his engine. He's fired his torpedoes, so I'm obviously going to take steps to avoid them, but they're not aimed at me. Oh, it looks like one spread of torpedoes was aimed at me, but either way he's dead. I'm now starting to attract fire. That's an enemy Kirov, and I am taking fire from somebody in that smoke screen. So there's 4,300 damage to the Kirov, and it's a Furataka in the smoke screen, and yeah, I don't like this very much. I was thinking about switching to the armour piercing at this kind of range and that kind of angle. Instead, I get my torpedoes away. I continue the fire as the Furataka turns away, and I've set my first fire. There's his torpedoes. They're going to miss. They're going to impact the wreck of the Fubuki. At that angle, armour piercing against the Furataka would have bounced off his stern plating. The high explosive, however, penetrates and sets another fire. So I'm not really experiencing any problems setting ships on fire, despite the -3% penalty to fires associated with the IFHE skill. And that's of course because I've taken the Demolition Expert skill, in conjunction with the India X-ray flag, which basically means that I only have a 0.5% reduced chance of setting a fire. And, well, I like those kind of odds. Now, I have lost half of my health in that brief exchange. The Badioni's a nice little ship, but it's not particularly well armoured. So I'm basically going to have to start keeping my distance, and that's something that the Bajoni is good at because it's quick and it has a 16.6 kilometer range on its guns. And we're going to see what sort of damage we can do to this New Mexico. Now, somebody is targeting me. I'm not entirely sure who it is, but I am able to... Oh, hello. Ah, that's a cheeky little Nicholas. Did he not see what just happened to the Fubuki? Well, alright, fair enough. Now, I've only got one turret that can fire at him, but that's 352mm guns. And let's see if we can finish this Nicholas off. Shots out. He's going a bit faster than I anticipated, but I did hit him, knocked his engine out, did some damage, and I can still get the shots over that island, and I am attracting a lot of fire now. I've sunk the Nicholas, but there's multiple ships shooting at me, and that Graf Spee over there is definitely one of them. Graf Spee, cruiser, but with 283mm battleship caliber guns. They do like shooting at cruisers, and he's taken an interest in ensuring that I have as short a game as possible, and I am able to hit him and set him on fire. Clean over the other side of that island. Still, I don't really want to get any closer than this. In fact, I'd like to get a lot further away from him, if at all possible. And he's not shooting at me anymore. In fact, now nobody has me targeted. Alright. Let's see what we can do. He's obviously had enough. He's turning around. He's burning quite merrily. Hello, hello, hello. There's that for Rataka. Okay, I'm firing the high explosive, but I'm going to switch to the armour piercing here, because, well, at that kind of angle, I may be able to score some citadels. The high explosive has once again scored a fire. I fire the armour piercing, but he's dead pretty much as soon as the shots leave the barrel. So, back to the high explosive. Let's see if we can finish off the Graf Spee. The ballistic properties of these shells is just about good enough that I can consistently still hit this guy clean on the other side of that island. He's on very, very low health. I'd love to set another fire. And there's another Graf Spee over there. We're going to target him instead. And I have set another fire on that Graf Spee, and I was hoping for a witherer kill here, but he pretty much runs right into one of our New Yorks who puts him out of his misery. Now, I am detected, but I know that nobody is targeting me, so I can afford to have some fun here. Graf Spee up there just ate the torpedo, and there are more heading towards him, which means if he's seen them, he's going to start turning towards me, which rules out armour piercing. Armour piercing at this kind of range, you can get a lucky citadel with some plunging fire, but you're as likely as not to arm the fuse of the armour piercing shells when it hits the superstructure, in which case, well, you're not going to get a citadel. Now, I am hitting certain sections of the ship that have more than 32mm of armour, turrets for example, and the high explosive is doing no damage. But at the same time, armour piercing, coming in from directly above, as most of my shots are at this kind of range, can also hit the side of a turret, for example, or the side of the hull, and just ricochet clean off thanks to the angle, and do no damage. If the high explosive drops in from above, hits the side of the ship, well, it's going to explode, and it has 32mm of penetration, and he doesn't have 32mm of side armour. So the second Graf Spee is dead, and there's the Confederate award, which is nice. Now, I don't have line of fire on anything at the moment. Oh, there's the Nürnberg. He's still alive, and he's taken no damage. And he's got 2 kills. I appear to have severely misjudged that guy. He clearly does know what he's doing. But I'm going to speed up and help out that Bayern with this destroyer. And it looks like the New York up ahead has the same idea. The Bayern's managed to avoid his torpedoes, but while I'm on the way, let's see if we can get some more fires set. Starting with the New York. Shots out from all 3 turrets, and I'm completely safe from return fire, although maybe we can start a fire in the New Mexico as well. Let's have a go. I seem to have missed the New York. Did I miss the New Mexico? Yeah, I probably would have hit him by now. Right, that destroyer has definitely bitten off more than he can chew. He's managed to miss the Bayern with his torpedoes. He's taken some withering fire from the secondaries. And I've missed. And it's the New York who actually finishes him off. So, hey, what the hell, I tried. It's the thought that counts. Right, who's next? It's looking like it's going to be that enemy New York. Right. He's just outside of range. Let's put the spotter aircraft up and see. Yeah, there we go. That's more like it. I'm probably not going to get too many shots at him until he gets around into cover, but we'll make the most of it while we can. We don't really have anything else to shoot at. I've still got clear shots at him. That salvo does look pretty good. Yep, couple of hits, didn't set a fire. The range indicator is telling me that at least one of my turrets is occluded now, but you never know. One of the turrets, or possibly two of them, might have the clearance to get the shots over, but no, it doesn't look like they do. Oh, yeah, actually one of them did, but it missed. And now I'm pretty sure I no longer have a clear line of fire, so, alright. Well, we'll keep going, we'll chase him down, and we'll see what else we can shoot at while the spotter aircraft is up. I still have 45 seconds. Not really seeing... oh, hello. Torpedo bombers. Oh, there's the enemy carrier. Oh, ho, ho. Okay, we're going to have some fun here. It's just a bogue, it's not incredibly fast. So let's try and get this guy set on fire. You can see the number of fires that I've set so far. I'm really not having any problems whatsoever setting fires. Thanks to the skill build that I've picked with the demolition expert and running the India X-ray flag. Okay, the bogue's no longer spotted. I am spotted by his aircraft, but nobody's targeting me, so let's... I mean, I'm substantially faster than him, and I have hit him, and I have set him on fire. Minus 3% a chance of fire on target. Challenge accepted. Right, now, who are those torpedo bombers going for? Me or the battleship with me? And I have to admit, I'm not entirely sure, and since I'm not sure, I'm just going to act as if they are going for me. Because while I'm detected... it's not telling me that I'm being targeted by somebody, but I don't know if that includes aircraft, so it does actually look like he's going for the battleship, which seems like the right choice, and he is going to hit them with at least two of those torpedoes. Still, I did manage to shoot two of them down, despite the fact that I don't have the defensive fire consumable on this ship, before they managed to get the torpedoes away, so it could have been substantially worse for the Bayern if I hadn't been here. Now, I am still detected, and I'm pretty sure that has to be the bogue. Let's have a look. He was heading north, and the torpedo bombers are probably heading straight back. So, providing I just follow the torpedo bombers, yep, there he is. And there's no way he can outrun me. So, with... ooh, I am being targeted. I have been hit, and I don't like that very much. Ah, it's the Koenig. Right, well, let's try to finish the bogue off, or at least get him set on fire, while opening the distance on the Koenig. Oh, Citadel penetration. With high explosive. No fires as yet. And the Koenig is desperately... oh, there's the fire we were looking for. And more hits, although he's no longer spotted. The Koenig definitely has me targeted. No question about it. So let's present as small as possible a target to him. The Bayerns finished the bogue off. There were some dirty kill stealers on my team today. I'm joking. I don't care. And now I'm going to do something that the Koenig is probably not expecting. I'm going to charge him. I mean, this game's in the bag, and I want to see what these guns can do to the bow armour of a battleship. Now, the Koenig's only tier 5, so he only has 25mm of bow plating. Wouldn't matter if he was tier 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 or 10. With this Inertia Fuse High Explosive skill, I can penetrate 32mm of bow plating, and even the Yamato only has 32mm of bow plating, so there he is. Full speed to the engines. I'm going to need to get close for this to work. I mean, I can obviously still hit his superstructure and penetrate his forward deck with the high explosive, and maybe set a fire. We're going to see. He's probably not expecting me to be charging him. He's swinging around. Yeah, he's going to be unleashing the broadside, so nose towards him. If he hits me on the bow, he can citadel me from the front. Right. So don't try this at home, kids. And very light damage. Don't know where he hit me. Torpedoes only have a 4km range. Probably not going to kill this guy with torpedoes. 2 enemy ships left, just the Fuso and this guy. I'm sort of at the range now where I can hit his bow straight on. I am being targeted again. It has to be the Koenig. Again, he's trying to get as many shots off as possible between my salvos, but I reload every 8 and he's done. And there's the Fuso, and he's done as well. So, victory in the Badioni. How did I do? Well, 94,000 damage, 1 Citadel with high explosive, 10 fires set. With this skill build, the IFHE skill for 30% increased high explosive penetration, Demolition Expert and the India X-ray flag to offset the minus 3% chance of setting a fire. The only real difference I'm seeing here is, well, I'm not setting any fewer fires, and I am doing more damage with the high explosive to targets that I just would not be able to penetrate with the armour piercing. This skill is a real game changer for cruisers with 152mm guns. Sadly, that doesn't include the Royal Navy cruisers, because while the majority of Royal Navy cruisers do have 152mm guns, they don't fire high explosive. Unless you're talking about the premium Royal Navy cruisers or Commonwealth cruisers like the Belfast and the Perth. Now, if you're a battleship player, you might be sitting there thinking, oh great, more good news, and well, yeah, but if you're a German battleship player, this is actually fantastic news, because remember, to calculate how much armour your high explosive can penetrate, you divide the calibre of your gun by 6, unless you're a German battleship, which, for some strange reason, only divide the calibre by 4. Now, this is of specific value for German secondaries, because German 128 and 150mm secondaries also divide the calibre by 4. So let's just quickly do the math here. 128 divided by 4 is 32, plus 30% means a German 128mm secondary gun battery can penetrate 41mm of armour at any angle. There has never been a better time to specialise in secondaries. And that's incredibly bad news for American high-tier battleships, because their 38mm of midships deck armour no longer protects them from German 128 or 150mm high explosive secondary gun hits. And as I hope I've shown you today, it's also a complete no-brainer for any cruiser that can fire high explosives, so that kind of rules out the Royal Navy other than the premiums, the Perth and the Belfast, and has 150mm or higher main battery guns. Hope you enjoyed today's video, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.